today, I just really want to get you aware that Candida exists and that if it's something that you can work on and fix, then you can have a better life. You can be happier, less moody, more energized, get rid of excess weight, all those things. Just live a more joyful life. And that's what this is about, the Pure Joy Podcast, how to find more pure joy. Sometimes you have to go through a little bit of the fire before you get to the water. So doing a cleanse isn't always easy. Eliminating foods isn't always easy, but there's a light at the end of that tunnel. There's a rainbow with a pot of gold, and it just keeps getting better. Life just keeps getting better. And yes, sometimes we backslide. Sometimes we slip up. I don't even want to call it slipping up. Sometimes we just do human things because we're in human bodies. But guess what? You just keep getting right back on track. The more you build your foundation, the less you want to eat those foods. Gluten is one of those things for me that I just never think about eating anymore. And that took me a long time to get there. And same with white sugar. I mean, it's not going to be something that happens overnight. Possibly it will be if you're that kind of person. But just remember that once you get on the road and you set your intentions, write down 3 intentions right now when you finish listening of what you want to get out of doing a Candida cleanse or just out of an elimination diet. And having those goals in mind that you can repeat every morning or write down every morning to remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing, that should help. Hi there, and welcome to the Pure Joy Podcast. I'm your host, Elena Love, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Candida. What is Candida? How do you get it? And how do you get rid of it? I know a lot of you have probably heard of Candida over the years. Maybe some of you have it or know you have it or maybe think you have it and just aren't sure. So I'm going to just talk to you today about my story, about how I battled Candida for years and how I actually was able to get rid of it, and some solutions for you. So if you listen to the end, you will get a little rundown of what I believe after my years of experience of dealing with Candida, the best way to approach it without going too hardcore, because a lot of times that ends up becoming a yo-yo effect of where you're getting rid of it, then it comes back, then you get rid of it. I've become somewhat of an expert because, over 20 years ago when I got into the raw food diet, I had systemic Candida. And the reason I knew I had it is because I got a blood test from an osteopath. He was a naturopathic doctor that practiced osteopathy, is where they work on your skeletal structure. He restructured my skull, but that was just part of it. I went in kind of just for an overall general checkup. I had these warts on the bottom of my feet that just weren't going away. And they were plantar's warts. And so I was worried that if I tried to dig them out myself, they would just get worse, because that's what I heard, that they just keep coming back. And I thought, well, let me just get to the source of it, go and find out what's going on. And as soon as he took one look at me, he's probably seen thousands of patients over the years. He just looked at my face and said, "Oh, honey, I think you have Candida." And I had heard of it. I kind of knew what it was. And I was like, okay, well, what do we do? So he proceeded to do the blood test on me, which was like at that time, that was 20 years ago, a $500 blood test, and to find out what food allergies I had, and just to find out what was going on in my system. And lo and behold, when the test came back, I was allergic to most of the foods that I was eating at that time, because I was being a good little vegetarian and trying to, avoid meat. So I was eating a lot of eggs, and I was eating a lot of sesame, and I was eating a lot of grains and soy, and just all the things that vegetarians usually switch over to when they get rid of dairy and meat. So he said, "Well, I hate to tell you, but you're allergic to sesame, you're allergic to soy, you're allergic to eggs, and you're allergic to bananas." And I think that was the top ones. And I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? What do I eat? There's nothing left to eat. And I just felt so frustrated at the time. And of course, he said, you got to get rid of all the glutinous grains, and you got to get rid of any sugar in your diet. And at that time, I was eating like a lot of soy ice cream. They didn't really have coconut ice cream back then. That was in the 90s. So I was just doing my best. And I remember sitting down at that time and just having a real cry, sitting on my couch, recording this little tape recorder to my friend in New Zealand. We used to send these mini tapes back and forth to each other once a month, just to kind of give each other the lowdown on what's going on in our lives. I guess that was my original first podcast, huh? And I just sat there telling her about what I was going through. And I just remember tears streaming down my face, because I know changing our diet is not the easiest thing, especially if you feel like you're doing something that you feel is right, whether it's ethically right by maybe being a vegan or vegetarian, or whether you feel this is the diet that, people have told me is going to work for me. And maybe you're seeing results in some areas, like your weight's balanced, or, you're able to gain muscle. But if you're experiencing Candida symptoms and you're having issues with blood sugar and just general malaise or low energy, then maybe there's something else to look at. And it's especially prolific with among people who have autoimmune. And autoimmune, that word's kind of been floating around out there for a while. And basically what it is when the immune system starts to shut down and it fights itself versus doing what it's supposed to do, which is fighting foreign invaders. So people with autoimmune often experience skin problems, really bad bowel issues, whether it's irritable bowel syndrome or inflammatory bowel disease, just different things where it's really uncomfortable most of the time when they're eating food, and mood swings and low energy. And this is not just autoimmune. These are also tied to Candida. So if you're experiencing anything like digestive issues, fatigue, brain fog, recurring fungal infections, whether that's a yeast infection for women or for men, maybe I find that a lot of men have fungal infections on their feet, and you'll look at their toes and feet and they're just covered with yeast and mold. And they've kind of just decided that that's just the way life is, but there is actually a solution. You can get rid of that. Other things is things like eczema, which can appear on hands and arms and legs. And those are just usually real itchy spots that if you scratch them enough, they'll get bloody, but just kind of keep puffing up and getting itchier and really never subsiding. And the more sugar you eat, more wheat you eat, the more yeast you eat, the worse it gets. So does this sound like a crazy thing? A lot of this is caused by Candida overgrowth. And so I actually was born with Candida. When I was a baby, my mom, the reason I know this, she didn't say that to me. She told me I was born with thrush, which is basically Candida in the mouth. And I think my mom had Candida and she didn't know it. And so her doctor, she was feeding me cow's milk from birth. And her doctor, when I was 6 months old, they moved from Nebraska to California with me on her lap. Like back then they didn't even use seatbelts and there was no car seats or anything. And when we got to California, she said she took me in and the doctor yelled at her because my diaper rash was so bad. So that was kind of my beginning of life, just a horrible diaper rash and thrush in my mouth. Yay, welcome to the world, little girl. So I just basically had it and nobody ever did anything to get rid of it. So I know I just had it my whole life. And it was in my 30s that I finally went and got these blood tests. So I lived with it for over 30 years. What were some of the things I experienced? Looking back on my pictures of myself in high school, I always had a nasty look on my face, arms crossed. I was just always in a cranky mood. And I remember being super irritable. And I had eczema really bad, so bad that I would hide my hands from people so they couldn't see like the bleeding and the crusting and the oozing lymph coming out of my hands. Pretty disgusting, pretty sad way to grow up. I mean, it wasn't like I had a miserable childhood. I had a lot of fun, but those were some of the things. And I remember things like my mom limited snacks, but she did not limit sugar. We could have all the bread and sugar we wanted. It was kind of a weird mix because sometimes when we were kids, we weren't allowed to have a cookie. But if I got my cereal bowl out, I could put as much sugar in there as I wanted. And I remember eating things like, Raisin Bran and picking out all the raisins and eating those and leaving the bran behind. And then also putting so much sugar in the cereal bowl with the milk that you could actually see the heap of sugar coming over the top of the milk. And, back then it was just like, go ahead. It's calories, it's cheap. So my mom didn't mind us eating all we wanted of it. Since healing this Candida and figuring out what the problem was and doing all my detective work, which I did a lot of, believe me, I spent when I learned about raw foods and healthy eating in 1997 is when I really kind of got on the bandwagon. I spent the first 10 years till at least 2007 just as a major orthorexic health detective. And when I say orthorexic, I mean I was obsessed. I was just like, would not let one grain of sugar or anything past my lips. But I did figure a lot of stuff out. I was able to do a lot of colon cleansing and be my own health detective so that I could turn around and help other people. And that's what I've ended up doing. I've helped tons of people get rid of Candida or change their diet. And so that's what this podcast is basically about today, that I want to kind of just give you guys a rundown of some of the things that could be really helpful or useful to you. Candida is basically, if you want the definition, it's a fungus and it's a form of yeast. And a very small amount of it actually lives in our mouth and intestines all the time. And its job is to aid with digestion and nutrient absorption. So it's a healthy part of our body. And it's actually, if Candida's there, it's like, bad stuff comes in and the Candida will just kind of eat it. So it's a symbiotic relationship. But what happens is with the standard American diet and stress and all these other things like taking birth control and antibiotics, it becomes overgrown and overproduced. And so what that happens then is it ends up breaking down the wall of the intestine, and it penetrates into the bloodstream, and it releases toxic byproducts into your body and causes leaky gut. And this can lead to many different health problems, and it ranges from digestive issues, even to depression. And, looking back when I was younger, I did have depression. I felt sad a lot, and I actually was suicidal. Now, when I say I was suicidal, I never actually went through and got pills or did something to actually plot killing myself. But I was a lot of times in a place where I just wanted to end it, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And, maybe you're thinking a lot of teens feel that way, but I felt like even later into the years when I learned about Candida, if I would have sugar, I would notice feeling super depressed the next day. And it wasn't just sugar. It's also things like alcohol, gluten, high carbohydrate foods. For me, anything carbohydrate-y, even pumpkin and sweet potatoes, too much of that will cause brain fog for me. And I'll have a sugar crash and I'll wake up feeling a little bit depressed. And even though I've gotten rid of the Candida at this point, it's something that I am diligent with, and it's just something that's part of my life. Now, if that sounds depressing to you, speaking of depression, think of it this way. If you were someone that had, let's just say kind of crazy, a foot amputated, it just becomes part of your life. You get the prosthetic foot, you deal with those things in your life, and it's not like it's ever really going to go away, obviously, because there's no foot there. So Candida, I kind of want to tell you this up front, even though it might seem depressing to you, because this was my realization, my kind of aha moment. I went back into that same osteopath's office back in 1997 and was sitting in his office waiting for my next appointment. And I was being a good girl, and I was on the antibiotic drugs he had given me because he didn't really know about cleansing, and he didn't really know about the way that I do now about what the protocol can be. So he put me on a drug that killed fungus, and it was making me really tired, and I was super groggy. I had a 2-year-old son at the time, and I was just dealing with it, and I wasn't eating any of the bad foods. And I was reading an article in his office, and it was on Candida, and the woman in there said, even though I've gotten rid of it, I'll go out with my husband and have bread or wine, and the symptoms all come back. And I kind of hit my hand on my head and thought, I don't want to live like this. I don't want to just be living from outbreak to outbreak. But all I was thinking in my mind is, after I'm finished with this round of drugs he gave me, prescription drugs, as soon as I'm cured, how many times have you said this to yourself? I've heard people say this, I'll just go back to the way I was eating because I'll be cured. Well, that's not the case. And so when I read that article, I just got really depressed, and I thought, what should I do? I don't know what to do. So I sent up this little mini prayer and, just please help me. And I found a book on cleansing that very week in my chiropractor's office, and it was called Cleanse and Purify Thyself, and I Will Exalt Thee to the Highness of Power. That was the complete title of the book, which has since gone out of print, and the cleanse that I did, which was part of it, is no longer available. It was called the Arise and Shine Cleanse. However, I did diligently do that cleanse. I was diligent with everything, and I was able to get rid of the Candida. And so why I'm telling you guys about this today is because I want to help you to avoid some of the pitfalls that I had. So when the healthy or good bacteria in your gut, typically it keeps your Candida in check. It keeps this overgrowth in check so it doesn't get overgrown. However, the population of Candida can get out of hand if, one, you take antibiotics, a round of antibiotics. That kills too many of the friendly bacteria, because usually antibiotics kills everything. Biotic means life, anti means against. So it's just basically going in there and destroying everything with the thought that you will regrow your good bacteria. But how many of you have gone to a doctor and they've given you antibiotics? Have they ever mentioned, hey, when you're done with this, you really need to go on a round of probiotics? Or, hey, you should probably consider going off sugar and gluten and things that feed whatever this infection is in your body. But they never tell you that, do they? So you're kind of on your own. And I really think it's sad that even in this day and age in 2018, that doctors are still not really giving that much advice on how to get rid of these chronic infections. Because, of course, as we know, the pharmaceutical industry is designed to keep you sick and just keep giving you these drugs so that you will keep coming back. You're a customer for life. You get better for a while, feel good, make some more money, so you can bring it in and spend it all over again. Vicious cycle. So here's some of the things that can feed Candida. Fermented foods, because a lot of people think, oh, I can have fermented foods. Those are actually good for me. Things like kombucha, sauerkraut, pickles, even things like miso. Now, I found that out the hard way as well, because if you have Candida, you can eventually eat those foods. And if you have a balanced system and you don't have Candida, those foods can be really good for you. But they can be very imbalancing if you do have Candida. So that's something in the protocol that you want to look at not having for a while until you get your system back in balance. Other things are oral contraceptives, high stress lifestyle. I think stress is one of the number one causes of illness this day and age. We do attribute a lot to diet, but stress can be even worse for you than having a bad diet. And then also things like refined carbohydrates and sugar, alcohol intake, and also fried food. Fried food is one of the worst things that feed any kind of fungal infection or Candida. What are the 10 common Candida symptoms? Candida actually has a unique ability to change shape in order to protect itself from harsh environments, and it responds to a shift in temperature or acidity levels by transforming from a rounded yeast cell into an elongated cell. And the elongated cells have the ability to permeate the gut lining and cause leaky gut. And once in the bloodstream, they invade other tissues. So Candida actually has, and this is kind of a collection of places I've learned this from. One of them is Dr. Amy Meyer. She has a lot of things on her website about Candida. Another one is a website called the Candida Cleanse. And I actually bought that cleanse and did that. But what I learned on that site is about the difference between fungal yeast and just like dormant yeast. So we all have dormant yeast or Candida in our body. It's when it becomes the fungal type where it actually gets little tendrils that come out of it that it's active. So the key isn't really to kill Candida because you can never really kill it. The key is just to get it to stay in its dormant yeast stage instead of its active fungal stage. I hope that makes sense to you. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But once this fungal yeast is in the bloodstream, this elongated hyphal cell is in the bloodstream, it's when it can cause all kinds of problems. It can colonize in the skin, in the mouth, in the ears. Have you ever had real itchy ears after you drink a glass of wine or beer? It can get in your thyroid. It can get into your urinary tract. It can get into your organs, like your liver. It can hibernate in your bladder, of course, as we know people that get chronic UTIs. And for this reason, Candida overgrowth symptoms are wide-ranging and can be present in a lot of ways. Skin and nail infections I talked about, things like athlete's foot, ringworm, and toenail fungus. And sometimes it's not just the toenails, it's the whole foot. Oh my gosh. You see some of these people with these yeasty feet. And they'll tell you, oh, I don't really eat sugar. These are a lot of times men. I just like to drink beer. And then you look at their toes and go, yeah, because that's like all the Candida just drops down to the feet. That's my theory anyway. So feeling tired and worn down or suffering from chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia. Now I had the chronic fatigue part and I was always feeling tired and worn down. And as I suffered with this Candida and kind of started to heal it, I noticed some of the symptoms got worse before they got better, which is part of the healing process. Digestive issues such as bloating, constipation, diarrhea, autoimmune disease such as Hashimoto's, thyroiditis, rheumatoid arthritis, ulcerative colitis, lupus, psoriasis, or multiple sclerosis. Difficulty concentrating, poor memory, lack of focus, ADD, ADHD, and or brain fog. Skin issues such as eczema, psoriasis, hives, and rashes. Irritability, mood swings, anxiety or depression, vaginal infections, UTIs, rectal itching or vaginal itching, severe seasonal allergies or itchy ears, strong sugar or refined carbohydrate cravings. If you think you have a Candida overgrowth, then you can go on a lot of places online and get a simple quiz. But Dr. Amy Myers, MD, you can do her quiz there. You can even just Google Candida quiz just to find out some of the symptoms. Now, chances are high you're going to test that you have it on a quiz, because so many things that we are doing in our mainstream diet are causing a lot of these symptoms I just talked about. But a high percentage of people that have those symptoms actually are experiencing some form of fungal overgrowth. Now, it might not always be Candida, but it doesn't matter if it's Candida or some other kind of fungus or parasite. It's all kind of tied together. It's all similar. So by listening to this today and just getting some ideas, at least you can get started on starting to think about what you can do. So once Candida has penetrated your intestinal lining and caused your gut to become leaky, it opens the floodgates for undigested food particles, toxins, viruses, and bacteria to pass through your intestinal wall and into your bloodstream. And this triggers an inflammatory response from your immune system in an attempt to fight off these foreign invaders. As your gut remains leaky, your immune system continues sending out wave after wave of inflammation and soon gets stressed, weakened, confused, and begins firing less accurately. When this happens, your own body's tissues can end up in the crosshairs of your immune system. And over time, this can lead to develop full-blown autoimmune disease. There's several ways that you can test for Candida. One is a blood test, which is what I did. It tests for IgG, IgA, and IgM, which are all Candida antibodies in your blood. It can be performed at any lab, so you could actually just order it yourself. And high levels of these antibodies indicate that an overgrowth of Candida is present somewhere in the body and that your immune system is reacting to it. So remember that Candida has the ability to suppress the immune system. So it's important to ask your doctor to test your total IgG, IgA, and IgM levels along with the Candida antibodies. You can also do a stool test, which tends to be the most accurate, and this will check for Candida in your colon or lower intestines. And stool tests are pretty easy to get these days. Like I said, just ask Dr. Google and you can find all kinds of stool tests that you can just send in. And it's not like you're putting a whole stool into a bag. Usually it's just a swipe on a swab or toilet paper. You're not sending in a ton. You're just like a little mini sample, so don't get grossed out. And that's a really good way to test. And so with the stool test, your stool is directly analyzed for levels of Candida, and the lab can usually determine the species of yeast as well as which treatment will be effective. Now, I want to have a little caveat with that, which treatment will be effective, because I said a lot of times they'll just put you on an antifungal drug, whatever the current one is of it, and that could work, but it's also going to affect your liver and affect your body in other ways that aren't as healthy. Effectively treating Candida involves stopping the overgrowth and restoring the friendly bacteria. That usually keeps them in check. And you also need to repair your gut so that the Candida can no longer enter your bloodstream. And you can accomplish this with pretty simple things. The first thing you need to do is, now we use the word starve, but basically what I think of as, you're never going to kill Candida, like I mentioned earlier. You just want to balance it. So I also want to kind of have you in your mind, if right now you're listening to this kind of freaking out, thinking, oh my gosh, this seems overwhelming. There's so many things to do. Just take a deep breath right at the moment and just think, okay, all I have to do is stop feeding it. It's like anything. If you see pollution in your neighborhood and you turn the factories off and there's a good rain, guess what? The air is going to be clean. So it doesn't have to be that hard. And I really do like to just focus on the diet versus on all these things that kill it. And I will talk a little bit about those. But the first thing you want to do before you even start with like ordering things that might kill Candida, don't do that. Because what happens, I'm going to talk a little bit about my own experience now, is I did that. I had those drugs that they put me on that, killed yeast, and I got so out of sorts. I was cranky, I was irritable, I was all these things. And I think I might have just kind of made it worse before I made it better, because I was taking it from the wrong angle. Instead of just saying, okay, what things in my diet can I eliminate? What things can I really look at doing up front without upsetting the whole homeostasis? Think of homeostasis like an airplane that's flying straight. Now, when you get out of homeostasis, let's say you start taking all these things like caprylic acid or antifungals, and even if they're natural stuff like oregano oil and whatnot, one of the airplane wings, let's say the right wing, starts to tilt and go, and, way down. And like the farther down you go, the more you feel off kilter, right? And so homeostasis is, the body's usually pretty happy when it's in homeostasis. And right now, even if you have Candida, unless you have super severe symptoms, you're in your own form of homeostasis. So you don't want to get too out of whack and out of balance. So that's why I like step-by-step process of how to do this. And then the more healthier you start to feel, the more you can do more research and get deeper into the process. So the first thing you want to do is just go on a basic elimination diet. And that would include, of course, the first thing you're going to want to get rid of is sugar. Any form of sugar. And that even means if you're eating chocolate bars that have white sugar in them, that is a form of sugar. Any kind of cereals, breads, anything with grains. You don't have to completely go grain-free, although I recommend that just because the sooner you get rid of grains in your diet, the quicker you're going to heal. But at least get rid of the glutinous grains like wheat, spelt, barley, rye, kamut, even oats. Oats can feed Candida. If you want to keep a few grains in your diet, keep things like buckwheat and millet and amaranth and maybe some quinoa for now. White rice is out because that's sugar and it feeds Candida. So once you get the hang of like just getting sugar out of your diet, and that's why I offer my 4-week love camp, because it's a ketogenic course, all plant-based, with, guess what? No sugar. Some of the recipes call for coconut sugar, but there's always an or option, which would be things like stevia or monk fruit or erythritol, which are super low glycemic and are safe for people with Candida in moderation. The best thing is to just really train your palate not to crave sweets. Try not to get into this alternative, like, I can't have sugar, so I'm going to start eating a bunch of stevia to satisfy my sweet tooth, because the body can really, truly never heal until you can get that sweet tooth under control. So the first thing is just slowly back off on all these sweet foods and see if you can get your cravings to get back in balance. And of course, another thing that you need to get rid of is alcohol. Eliminate most carbohydrates such as fruit and maybe some berries, some raspberries. Raspberries are the lowest glycemic. That's why I say raspberries. Lemon and lime are fine, and blackberries in moderation. But starchy vegetables, like I mentioned earlier, sweet potatoes, yams, white potatoes, maybe raw carrots are fine if you're shredding them and using them as a condiment. But beets, things like that. Anything baked that's a root vegetable is going to be turned to sugar, okay? And I know this is the holiday season, so this is probably not the best time for me to be telling you this, but if you are going to be eating fruit, don't eat bananas or mangoes or pineapples or all those high sugar fruits. They're just going to feed the beast. And I tend to call yeast, fungus, mold, bacteria, Candida, all those, I categorize them into one thing, which is the yeasty beasties. So you don't want to feed the yeasty beasties. How do you know if you fed them? Because you're going to start to feel better. Maybe you'll go through like 3 days of feeling kind of crappy and like a Candida flu and a little out of whack. But then once you stop feeding them, things will subside. The itching in the ears, the nasal itching, I used to get itching in my eyeballs, and I still do if I eat something like a bad form of nutritional yeast. My eyeballs will start to itch. It's probably just the tissue around the eyes, but it feels like the eyeballs. You'll know if you ate something that's not serving you, because once you get rid of all that itching, it'll come back with a vengeance. As soon as you eat a bite of sugar or a bite of bread or something like that, you'll start to itch, which is great. It's the canary in the coal mine. It's a great way for your body to actually tell you, hey, this feeds yeast. And that's all you need to know. If your skin starts itching again, or you wake up with a rash or, acne, guess what? Whatever you ate is not serving you. So this is just, whether or not you have Candida, this is just great information for life. How do you know if a food's good for you or not? Eliminate it. And then 3 days later, a week later, try having some. And if you get a reaction, it's not serving you. Why do you think it's serving you in the moment? Because you're in homeostasis. You're not going to constantly be out of balance. The body finds a way to balance itself. But unfortunately, if that was the only thing and you could be like, well, fine, I'll just keep up my ways and I'll just stay in this homeostasis. Unfortunately, people are getting cancer. People are getting thyroiditis. People are getting all these underlying diseases that just pop up out of nowhere. Oh, he was perfectly healthy and then he died of cancer. It's not out of nowhere. It's that you're in homeostasis. You're feeding this yeast, mold, and fungus constantly with sugar, with McDonald's hamburgers, with bread, with all these things that we tell ourselves are okay, even coconut bliss, which has agave. Anybody that really checks in knows what's serving them and what's not. So anyway, getting rid of some of those or all of those things. And you can do it systematically, where the first week you just get rid of white sugar. And then the second week you get rid of all other forms of sugar like honey and maple syrup and coconut sugar and agave. And agave should never be on your list anyway. You can use all the stevia you want. And then slowly but surely the next week or the next month, you can take your time. Take a year to do this if you want. Get rid of maybe all white breads or all white foods like white rice, white bread, white flour, white starch, white potatoes. And there's layers and levels, and you can eventually systematically get rid of all processed foods, all junk food, all cereals, all grains, all sugar. I hope I'm not scaring you, because I'm in a place right now where I really pretty much eat a ketogenic diet with a few splurges here and there. And I feel super good. And it's like, it's really good to be on this side of it and not have sugar cravings. Another thing to get rid of is also legumes for a while. And so starchy vegetables, grains, and legumes aren't something you have to get rid of forever. That's just something you want to get rid of while you're on a Candida diet. And don't worry, there's tons of yummy vegetables that are still left that you can eat. If you're a meat eater, you can still eat that. You can have all the fats you want. They don't feed yeast, especially things like coconut oil, which actually has caprylic acid, which is helpful in healing Candida, which is balancing it. So you've gone on the elimination diet, and then you want to maybe start taking some supplements. And this could be 6 months down the line. Why do I tell you this? Because there's something called Candida Consciousness or Candida brain or fungus brain or whatever you want to call it. You're humming along 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You feel like you got it all under control. Oh, I don't want sugar. What happens is, as the Candida, you haven't even taken anything to kill Candida. You're just doing an elimination diet. One day you wake up in the middle of the night or whenever during the day, and you get this thought in your brain that it's going to be okay to go out and have ice cream or a pie or fill in the blank, that old food that you used to love, bread. It's a special celebration. Well, that's what's called Candida Consciousness. It sideswipes you. It comes in from the side when you least expect it, and it has its own consciousness, and it doesn't want to die. So it's going to try and trick your brain to get you to eat something that there's no way you ever thought you would eat. I remember I had been a vegetarian for years at that point, driving by a McDonald's, or it probably wasn't McDonald's, but it was some kind of burger joint, and thinking, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to turn my wheel into their drive-thru. Oh my gosh, am I going to do it? Like, I really wasn't sure in that moment. I wanted to go in so badly, and I hadn't even wanted that food in years. But some kind of Candida Consciousness was trying to take over my brain, and I won. So I was able to get through with it. But there were times when I didn't win, and I would backslide and then have to start over again. So I'm letting you know about this because it's a real thing. And if you do backslide, you just get right back on track. But the less you feed the yeast, fungus, and Candida and mold, the quicker you're going to heal. And then, so the next step after getting rid of elimination diet and getting rid of it is to do some kind of Candida cleanse. There's one called Candida Defense, and there's a lot online that you can find. The other one that I used, like I said before, was the Candida Plan, and that had a good cleanse in it. And that had something called undecanoic acid, which I absolutely love, and it worked like a charm. And I used that for quite a while. And I did have a little bit of detox in the beginning, which was low energy, but it didn't last long. And I found that it really helped me. And it's spelled UNDECNOIC, undecanoic acid. And it's from the castor bean, believe it or not. But the way that it's structured is not just like drinking castor oil. It's done in a certain way. And that will actually really help neutralize Candida. I think of everything, that's top of my list. So research undecanoic acid, because I've tried a lot of these things out there, and some of them can be really harsh. So the final step would be to repopulate your gut with the good bacteria using a high potency probiotic. And probiotics are very personal. I've tried, I don't even know how many types over the years. It's got to be in the 20s or 30s of types of probiotics I've tried. At the current moment, I'm using one that I sell on my website called Flora Grow. And it's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. It really gets my colon moving. It helps me feel in balance. My brain works really efficiently with it. I have a lot of favorites that I've used over the years, and then they kind of stop working, so I try something else. With probiotics, you're never really going to plant the true level of probiotics that you need to stay healthy forever. Probiotics is just one of those things you're going to need to take. And I've been taking them for years, and I'll take some time off, and then I'll start taking them again. And so it's just part of it. That would be the next thing you do, is recolonize your gut. And you could go up to 100 billion, but sometimes that can be too intense. So you can start with 15 billion. And the fun thing is you can learn how to make your own cultured coconut yogurt, your own cultured plant-based cheeses with nuts. And I have all those classes on purejoyplanet.com, so you can learn how to make your own. And you put the probiotics in there, and then every time you eat your good, healthy plant-based cheese, you're getting a dose of probiotics. So that's kind of a side effect there too. So other things I want to talk about is the testing for things in your water. Make sure you are drinking clean water. I personally drink spring water because I live in a place where I can harvest it. I was just in Mount Shasta, and I was able to harvest some there as well. If you can't get spring water, then you want to get reverse osmosis, because there are a lot of things in the water system like fluoride, chloramine, all kinds of heavy metals. That heavy metals are one of the worst things that they really feed Candida. So if you have fillings, which I did get taken out after I found out I had Candida 20 years ago, I know a lot of people who've had them removed, and now they have really easy systems for getting them out. But the sooner you can get all that mercury out of your teeth and the heavy metals, the sooner you'll heal as well. So there's quite a few different things you can do to heal Candida, but I'm just giving you guys all this information so that you have a place to start. And so take maybe even just one of the things that I'm saying and start with that. How about this for a first start? Clean out your refrigerator and cupboards. That's it. Go in there, get a big bin that you can take to the Goodwill or donate to the food bank, and throw all the foods in there you know are no longer serving you. All the crackers, the cookies, the chips, the fried foods, the cereals, the boxed milks, all of that. Boxed milks, you wonder, oh, what's wrong with boxed milk? Most of that stuff has sugar in it and it feeds Candida. You can make your own amazing almond milk. I have a recipe on purejoyplanet.com. Just go to my website and you get all kinds of amazing recipes, and a lot of them are sugar-free, so that this will help you. So cleaning out your fridge. I've been to clients' houses over the years, and I have seen some crazy stuff. The most unhealthy people usually have the most unhealthy looking refrigerators, including one time a moldy chicken carcass in the back of someone's fridge. No kidding. Get hot water, get a bucket of hot water, put some gloves on, fill it halfway full with hot water, a big squirt of natural dish soap, and about a cup of white vinegar. And that's going to clean everything. It's going to get rid of fungus, mold, yeast. Vinegar is great for killing that on the outside of the body, but you don't want to put that in your body because it won't work in the same way. But that's great for cleaning your all your refrigerator doors and your cupboards, and just spend a Sunday and just get that fridge and those cupboards cleaned out. And then things like caprylic acid, antifungals, the undecanoic acid, those are all great. Another great thing you can do is a liver flush. And I'm a big proponent of liver flushes. In fact, oftentimes I have a lot of people start with a liver flush because the liver is tied to processing everything we put in our body. So if your liver's dirty, how are you going to do this colon cleanse? How are you going to do all these other things? As soon as you get that liver a little bit cleaned out, it's like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, even one or two. Sometimes nobody notices anything on the first liver flush, but after 2 or 3, now myself, I've done over 40 liver flushes because when I get on something, I'm like a pit bull. But I've done them, and I'm actually getting ready to do another one this month. Just keeping that liver fine-tuned and cleaned out. So by doing a liver flush, you're just going to kind of get that liver clean, and then you're just going to be able to think more clearly, and you might get rid of some parasites right away, even in the first liver flush. The more often you do them, if you can do them once a month for 6 months to a year, you're going to be sitting pretty. And you don't have to fast on a liver cleanse, so don't worry. It's just taking a certain protocol. The biggest thing is drinking the olive oil and grapefruit juice, which is just a quick, it's over within 10 minutes, and then you go to bed. So it's like maybe one night of feeling like a little hungover by drinking this oil, and then you're done and you get this amazing flush. So all of that information is on purejoyplanet.com as well. You can click on the store and go under detox or liver flushes and find out more about that. Here's some more protocol that I think is a really great place to start with. Journaling. Just get a journal and call it My Food Journal. Why do we eat? Getting into the emotional components of why we eat. So maybe the first week, you don't even eliminate anything from your diet. All you do is write down before you eat, how you're feeling, why you're eating, and then after you eat, it could be an hour later, 2 hours later, you could be after you get home, before bed, how you felt after you ate and why you think you ate that food. The answer could be hunger. Another answer could be emotional. Another answer could be boredom. So once you kind of get a little more clear on why you're eating, then that's going to help you. And maybe it's like an uncontrollable urge to binge on sugar. And then that's kind of a clue right there. Maybe I have Candida. Another thing you can do that's not food related, that's super easy, is colonics and enemas. I have an article on enemas in my store on the website that you can check out. Coffee enemas are awesome. They're going to clean your liver. They help you get off of coffee if you're someone who's on coffee and wants to get off of it. Coffee enemas 3 days in a row, and you won't have any caffeine withdrawals. Activated charcoal. Usually it's made from different things, but I like the one from coconut. And it's activated because it actually helps suck out toxins out of your body. Metabolic enzymes. Metabolic enzymes are different than digestive enzymes because digestive enzymes help you break down your food, and those are awesome. And there's all different kinds, and I recommend the plant-based ones. Of course, the ones that are on my website, on purejoyplanet.com store. And the metabolic enzymes actually work on a systemic level, so they're going to clean out something called fibrin. Fibrin is tied to fibroid tissue. You know, when you get those fibroids in your uterus or in your breasts from different things, you never know what they are, but a lot of it's caffeine or cheese or dairy or wine can all be tied to it. That'll break down the fibrin. If you're someone who has polycystic ovarian syndrome, it can help break down the fibroid tumors, the fibroid in the uterus that's giving you all that pain. And I actually do have testimonials from people who have bought my metabolic enzymes called reconstructive enzymes, and they've healed their body after trying everything. It helps with inflammation. It helps with scar. So trying those things out, just starting there. How about lemon water in the morning as the fall weather starts to increase? Like warm water with lemon is a way to start your day. Just half a lemon in a glass of water. Or if you want to juice a bunch and keep lemon juice in ice cube trays, just half a cube of a lemon ice cube in warm water, and that'll be like enough lemon to get you through the day. Breakstone tea or Pau di Arco tea are all really healing teas. If you're going to be drinking tea anyway, may as well brew up a batch of breakstone, also known as Chanca piedra, which literally means break stone. That'll break up kidney stones, liver stones, gallstones. It'll get rid of the intrahepatic stones, which means they're already out of your liver and gallbladder, and they're in your ducts, maybe waiting to cause a problem. So those teas are going to be awesome. Ketosis, get into ketosis. And I know all about that. You want to get on a low carb diet, around 60 to 100 grams a day. And that's kind of higher than someone that's really in ketosis. If you have Candida, you might want to even get as low as 20 net carbs a day, 20 to 60. And that you can look more into. We have our love camp online on purejoyplanet.com under courses. That's going to also help you lose weight and just feel better overall. And then triumph over your sugar cravings with some simple tricks like stevia in soda water with lemon. It tastes like lemon soda. Or put a little bit of grape stevia or grape essential oil or grape essence, I call it, from medicine flower. Surround yourself with positive people. Go to positive places and things. So maybe a bulletin board right outside of your bedroom door, or right where you can see it when you wake up in the morning. Hang a cork board and stick pictures on there of how you want to look, how you want to feel. A picture of someone waking up looking excited and happy to greet the day, or even just words like happy, joyful, energized, beautiful, anything that you want. Put that on the board, and then you see it every morning, and you're going to be surrounding yourself with those energies. Find a great meditation app. My personal favorite is called Insight Timer, and it's an app that you can get on your phone, and it's free, and you can just type in 10-minute meditation or grounding meditation or daily affirmations or whatever you're wanting to manifest, and type that in, and then you can do a 10-minute meditation every day, and then that'll turn into 20 minutes. And if you're like me, then I'm doing a couple 20-minute meditations a day, sometimes up to 3 times a day. I'll do a 20-minute meditation which I love. And that will actually be a game changer. So just to kind of finish up here, the first week of an elimination diet, you don't need to eliminate everything. You can just eliminate all sweet foods, except you can still have things like green apples, berries, stevia, lemons, and limes. You want to avoid fermented foods and sweeteners and any trigger foods. If there's a food for you that like bread or something that just makes you want to binge, then you want to definitely get rid of those. No fruit juices. You want to eliminate soy and grains. And if you can't eliminate all grains, remember, you can still have things like quinoa, millet, amaranth, and buckwheat. Buckwheat's a little warming for the winter, so that might be good if you're trying to eliminate all of the grains. Those are alkalizing grains, and they don't have gluten in them. You can still have some sweet potatoes in moderation for the first week. Then in the second week, you can go a little deeper, and you can eliminate all grains. And maybe that's the second month. It doesn't have to be the second week. Maybe give yourself a month for each phase. Depends on your personality. I'm one of those people that likes to go quickly. You want to eliminate grains, chocolate, and any other trigger foods. And then you go into like maybe the second month, and then you can start getting rid of more of the fruits and just keep only lemons and limes and their peels. I say and their peels because you can dehydrate lemon peel and grind it into a powder, and it makes a really sweet topping for things. Cranberries are still okay. So now that Thanksgiving's coming up, you can still have cranberries, but you just don't want to have sugar in them. And then maybe do your first, in the second or third month, you want to start thinking about doing your first liver cleanse. The first thing before you do a liver cleanse is just to clean up your diet, like I mentioned. You can do 3 to 6 months worth of liver cleansing, 1 a month, keeping on your elimination diet, and then maybe way into the maintenance and beyond, like 6 months down the line or a year down the line. You don't want to undo your hard work. So you want to keep up with the liver cleanses, look into some kind of parasite cleanse. There's a lot of companies out there. Now, I've tried some that I don't like, but other people like them. So I'm not going to really say which ones to do and which ones not to do. There's a ton on the market. Hulda Clark is a good company to look into. It's Dr. Hulda Clark. Just Google that, and there's a bunch of companies that sell her stuff. She has some really awesome cleanses on there as well. Blessed Herbs is another company. RevelationHealth.com. And I'll put all these notes I'm talking to you guys about in the show notes, so you can go look them up if you want to. I'm on a one right now called this True Cellular Detox Program, and that's by a company called Revelation Health. And then just get continued support by joining support groups. You can join our Love Camp, which is going to be turning into a year-long camp. Right now, we do it 4 times a year, 1 month in every season. So the next one's coming up in January of 2019. And if you're listening to this after that, then it's every season, so you can just look us up. So I hope this was helpful today. I just really want to get you aware that Candida exists, and that if it's something that you can work on and fix, then you can have a better life. You can be happier, less moody, more energized, get rid of excess weight, all those things. Just live a more joyful life. And that's what this is about, the Pure Joy Podcast, how to find more pure joy. Sometimes you have to go through a little bit of the fire before you get to the water. So doing a cleanse isn't always easy. Eliminating foods isn't always easy, but there's a light at the end of that tunnel. There's a rainbow with a pot of gold, and it just keeps getting better. Life just keeps getting better. And yes, sometimes we backslide. Sometimes we slip up. I don't even want to call it slipping up. Sometimes we just do human things because we're in human bodies. But guess what? You just keep getting right back on track. The more you build your foundation, the less you want to eat those foods. Gluten is one of those things for me that I just never think about eating anymore. And that took me a long time to get there. And same with white sugar. I mean, it's not going to be something that happens overnight. Possibly it will be if you're that kind of person. But just remember that once you get on the road and you set your intentions, write down 3 intentions right now when you finish listening of what you want to get out of doing a Candida cleanse or just out of an elimination diet. And having those goals in mind that you can repeat every morning or write down every morning to remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing, that should help. So I hope you've enjoyed listening today. And remember to go to iTunes and rate and review this podcast if you like what you're hearing. And I'd love any feedback if you want to put comments or send me an email to podcast@purejoyplanet.com. I love you guys, and I will see you soon.